There is a quiet sentence written by a Roman emperor, not for the world, but for himself. A reminder scratched into a private journal by a man who commanded armies and governed an empire. That man was Marcus Aurelius, and the journal was later called Meditations. But what makes those pages powerful is not their authority, it is their honesty. Marcus did not write to inspire crowds, he wrote to steady his own mind. He wrote because even an emperor wakes up anxious. Even a ruler feels anger, even a man with power fears loss. And in those quiet reflections we find 10 principles, not commandments, not rules, principles. The first principle is simple but difficult to live. You control your mind, not events. The world has never been gentle, not in Rome, not now. There will always be delays, insults, misunderstandings, illness, betrayal. The Stoic does not waste energy wishing reality were different. He turns inward and asks a sharper question: what is within my control here? Marcus reminds himself that external events are neutral. It is the judgment we add that creates suffering. This is not denial, it is discipline. The moment you separate the event from your interpretation, you regain power. The second principle flows from the first. Your perception shapes your suffering. When something happens, there is a pause, brief, almost invisible, between the event and your reaction. In that pause lives freedom. Epictetus once taught that people are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them. Marcus absorbed this deeply. A harsh word can be seen as disrespect, or as a reflection of someone else's turmoil. A failure can be seen as humiliation, or as instruction. The Stoic mind is not naive. It simply refuses to surrender its interpretation to impulse. The third principle is one that unsettles many people: you will die. Marcus returned to this thought often, not with fear, with clarity. He reminded himself that emperors, generals, merchants, philosophers all vanish. Time swallows praise and blame alike. When you sit with this truth long enough, trivial concerns begin to loosen their grip. Resentment feels smaller. Ego feels unnecessary. Mortality does not make life dark, it makes it precise. The fourth principle is about character. Be strict with yourself, tolerant with others. Marcus understood something most people resist. We judge ourselves by our intentions and others by their actions. Stoicism reverses that bias. It demands rigorous self-examination and generous interpretation of others. When someone behaves poorly, the Stoic asks, what belief led them to this? What ignorance? What fear? This does not excuse wrongdoing. It prevents hatred from taking root inside you, because hatred harms the container that holds it. The fifth principle is acceptance without passivity. There is a misconception that Stoicism teaches detachment from life. It does not. It teaches engagement without complaint. When something cannot be changed, accept it fully. When something can be improved, act decisively. Marcus often wrote about aligning himself with nature, not trees and rivers alone, but the nature of events. Things unfold according to causes beyond your control. Your role is not to resist reality. It is to respond to it with virtue. And virtue for the Stoic is not performance. It is inner alignment, courage when afraid, patience when irritated, justice when wronged, discipline when tempted. These first 5 principles are not strategies for domination. They are instructions for inner stability. And in a world that rewards noise and reaction, stability has become rare. Pause here. Reflect. If you applied even one of these principles consistently, if you truly separated events from interpretation, or remembered your mortality before reacting, how different would your daily life feel? Marcus was not trying to become extraordinary. He was trying to remain steady. In the next part, we will enter the deeper layers of his philosophy, principles that confront ego, loneliness, criticism, and the quiet battle with the self. The 6th principle in Meditations is quiet, but relentless. Do not seek validation from those who cannot give it wisely. Marcus reminded himself how small most praise truly is. He would ask, what kind of person is praising me? What do they value? If their standards are shallow, why should their approval feel heavy? We live in an age where attention has become currency. But Marcus lived in a palace filled with voices, opinions, flattery, and criticism. He knew how intoxicating approval could be, and he also knew how fragile it was. The Stoic does not build identity on applause. He builds it on character. If your actions align with your values, praise becomes irrelevant. If they do not, praise becomes dangerous. The 7th principle confronts something deeper. You are part of a whole. Marcus often reflected on the idea that he was a small piece of a vast system. Just as a hand belongs to a body, a human belongs to humanity. Isolation, in his view, was a misunderstanding. He wrote that what harms the hive harms the bee. This was not poetry, it was perspective. When you act selfishly, you injure the very system that sustains you. But this principle is not sentimental, it is grounding. You are not the center of the universe, you are a participant. And when you understand this, ego softens, entitlement fades, resentment weakens. The eighth principle moves inward again, guard your inner citadel. Marcus imagined the mind as a fortress. External events knock at its gates, but they cannot enter unless you allow them to. The world can insult you. It cannot degrade you without your consent. The world can criticize you. It cannot define you without your agreement. This is not arrogance. It is sovereignty. Seneca once wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Marcus understood this deeply. Many of our battles occur in private thought, long before reality demands them. To guard your inner citadel means you do not rehearse disasters that have not arrived. You do not replay insults endlessly. You do not surrender your peace to hypothetical futures. It means you choose your internal dialogue carefully. The ninth principle is about criticism. If someone shows you that you are wrong, change gladly. This one is uncomfortable. Marcus reminded himself to love correction. If someone reveals a flaw in your reasoning or behavior and they are correct, then you have been improved. Why resist improvement? The ego hates this principle. But Stoicism does not protect ego, it protects growth. To cling to error simply because it is yours is a quiet form of self-sabotage. The 10th principle is perhaps the most personal. Do the task in front of you with full attention. Marcus returned to this idea again and again. Focus on what is immediately required. Do it with sincerity, without complaint, without distraction. He did not write about grand destiny, he wrote about the present duty. Answer the letter. Lead the army, speak truthfully, think clearly. In a distracted world, this principle has become radical. We scatter our attention across imagined futures and distant fears. Marcus would gently pull it back. What is yours to do right now? When you act with full attention in the present moment, anxiety weakens, regret fades. You return to what is real. These principles are not abstract philosophy, they are psychological training. Marcus was not preparing for applause. He was preparing for adversity. He knew that storms would come, political chaos, plague, betrayal, war. He could not control the storm. He could only control the mind facing it. And that is the thread running through all 10 principles. Control the mind. Refine perception, remember mortality, discipline character. Accept reality, reject shallow validation. Act as part of the whole, guard your inner world, welcome correction. Focus on the present duty. There is no spectacle here, no dramatic promises, only steadiness. In the final part, we will gather these ideas together and ask a harder question. Why do so many people read Marcus Aurelius and still remain unchanged? There is a quiet problem that follows Stoic philosophy. Many people read these principles, they nod in agreement, they underline sentences, they feel briefly elevated, and then they return to reacting exactly as before. Why? Because understanding a principle is not the same as practicing it. The distance between knowledge and character is where most people remain stuck. It is easy to admire the idea of controlling your mind. It is far more difficult to control it when someone insults you. It is easy to reflect on mortality in silence. It is harder to remember it in the middle of resentment. Marcus wrote his reflections not once but repeatedly. He reminded himself of the same truths again and again. Why would an emperor need repetition? Because the human mind drifts, we forget, we react, we exaggerate. We defend our ego, we imagine worst-case scenarios, we seek approval. The Stoic path is not about becoming unshakable once. It is about returning to steadiness daily. And this is the deeper lesson behind the 10 principles. Stoicism is not a personality. It is a discipline. It is not about suppressing emotion. It is about examining it. When anger arises, the Stoic does not deny it. He investigates it. What belief is fueling this? What expectation has been violated? Is this within my control? When fear appears, he does not shame himself. He asks, is this danger real or imagined? When pride swells, he remembers mortality. When shame whispers, he focuses on present action. The transformation does not happen in dramatic moments. It happens in small corrections, a pause before responding, a breath before speaking, a shift in interpretation before resentment takes root. This is how character is built, quietly. And here is something many overlook. Marcus did not write these principles because life was calm. He wrote them during war, during political tension, during plague. He did not wait for stability to practice stability. He practiced it in instability. That is why these principles endure. They were forged under pressure. In our time, the battlefield is different. It is distraction, it is comparison, it is outrage cycles, it is the constant pull of validation and noise. But the internal struggle remains the same. You still must choose your interpretation. You still must govern your reactions. You still must act with integrity when no one is watching. The Stoic does not aim to control the world. He aims to avoid being controlled by it. This is a subtle difference, but it changes everything. When you stop trying to force outcomes and begin focusing on inner alignment, your energy shifts. You become less reactive, less easily offended, less dependent on approval, not because you do not feel, but because you understand. And understanding creates space. Space between stimulus and response. Space between ego and action. Space between fear and decision. That space is freedom. The 10 principles are not meant to be admired. They are meant to be rehearsed. Tomorrow, something small will test you. A delay, a disagreement, a criticism. In that moment, you will not remember a 12-minute reflection. You will remember a single sentence. Control your mind. Guard your inner world. Do the task in front of you. And if you live even one of these consistently, your life will not become perfect. It will become steady. And in a restless age, steadiness is rare.